In this video, I challenge the greatest mystery of human existence, the conquest of death itself. We are going to decode the forbidden mathematics the pharaohs of ancient Egypt used to challenge mortality. But the translations of these ancient numerical codes are fragmented, guarded by centuries of academic dogma that dismissed them as mere superstition. And if I fail to accurately piece together this mathematical puzzle, the greatest secret to human longevity and spiritual immortality ever recorded will remain permanently erased from human memory. Because for thousands of years, historians have blindly accepted that the ancient Egyptians relied on primitive magic, mythological spells, and physical mummification to secure their place in the afterlife. But when you look closely at the architecture of the pyramids, the exact sequence of spells in the Book of the Dead, and the precise measurements of the sarcophagi, a terrifying and brilliant truth emerges. It was not magic, it was mathematics. Therefore, we must look at their entire civilization through the lens of advanced numerology. The ancient Egyptians were absolutely terrified of oblivion. The concept of their soul ceasing to exist was a psychological horror they could not accept. Because they feared this ultimate end, they obsessively observed the natural world, looking for patterns of regeneration. They watched the sun die every evening and resurrect every morning. They watched the Nile flood and recede in perfect rhythmic cycles, and in these cycles, they discovered numbers. They realized that the universe was not chaotic, but rather governed by a strict, unbreakable numerical code. They believed that if they could align their physical bodies and their souls with this cosmic math, they could essentially hack the system of life and death. This is the core secret of Egyptian numerology. They were not just building tombs, they were building resurrection machines calibrated to the exact frequencies of the universe. To understand how they attempted to cheat death, we must first unlearn everything we have been taught about their religion. We have to strip away the animal-headed gods and the intricate mythology and look at the raw numbers pulsing beneath the surface of their culture. This journey will take us deep into the heart of the Great Pyramid, through the mathematical trials of the underworld, and finally to a revelation about the number 9 that will completely change how you view your own existence. The stakes could not be higher, because the code they left behind is still active today.
To build a machine that conquers death, you must first understand the fundamental number of completion. For the Egyptians, this was the number 9, because the number 9 holds a unique mathematical property known as digital root reduction, which mirrors the concept of eternal return. If you multiply 9 by any number, the digits of the answer will always add back up to 9. 2 times 9 is 18. 1 plus 8 is 9. 3 times 9 is 27. 2 plus 7 is 9. But the Egyptians did not just see a math trick, they saw a spiritual law. Therefore, they structured their entire pantheon of creation around the Ennead, a group of exactly 9 primary creator gods. Atum, the source, created a cascading lineage of deities that totaled 9, representing the complete expansion of the universe. Because human life is temporary, they believed that aligning the soul's journey with the number 9 would mathematically force the universe to cycle the soul back into existence, just as the multiples of 9 always return to their source. This was their first major numerological hack to cheat death. They integrated the number 9 into the exact proportions of their sacred temples, ensuring that anyone who walked through those halls was subconsciously resonating with the frequency of completion and rebirth. But achieving this resonance was incredibly dangerous. If a tomb was constructed with dimensions that violated the sacred ratio of 9, the Egyptians believed the soul would become trapped in a state of mathematical dissonance, unable to complete the cycle and doomed to the void. This is the common enemy of all ancient numerologists, the void, the chaotic nothingness that exists outside of mathematical order. The fear of this void drove them to obsessive precision. The pharaohs employed the greatest mathematical minds of their era, known as the shadow measurers, to ensure every single stone placed in a funerary complex was a multiple of their sacred numbers. They were essentially programming the environment. Think of it like modern computer code. If there is a single error in the syntax, the program crashes. For the Egyptians, a numerical error in the tomb meant the soul would crash into oblivion. So the Ennead was not just a family of gods, it was a mathematical algorithm for resurrection. By understanding the number 9, they believed they had found the back door to immortality. Yet the number 9 was only the foundation. To truly cheat death, they had to confront the universal scales of justice, which operated on an entirely different, highly specific number that decided the ultimate fate of the human soul.
Once the foundation of 9 was established, the soul had to navigate the most terrifying trial of the afterlife, the weighing of the heart. But this was not a moral judgment as we understand it today. It was a strict mathematical audit. Because the universe demands ultimate equilibrium, the Egyptians believed the heart recorded the energetic weight of a person's life. Therefore, in the Hall of Ma'at, the heart was weighed against a feather, representing perfect cosmic order. However, there is a specific numerical sequence hidden in this ritual that is often overlooked. The soul had to face exactly 42 judges, known as the assessors of Ma'at. Why exactly 42? In Egyptian numerology, the number 42 was deeply connected to the foundational structure of their society, which was divided into 42 distinct provinces or nomes. By facing 42 judges, the deceased was essentially proving that they were mathematically aligned with every single fracture of the ordered world. They had to recite 42 negative confessions, stating the sins they had not committed. This was a literal balancing of an equation. Each confession neutralized a potential mathematical error in the soul's code. If the heart was heavy with the chaos of an unbalanced life, the numbers would not align, and the heart would be devoured by Ammit, a monstrous deity that represented the ultimate deletion of the soul's data. Because the stakes were absolute existence or absolute annihilation, the Book of the Dead served as a cheat sheet, a manual of equations, to ensure the heart's weight matched the feather perfectly. The priests calculated that the average human life was inherently flawed and chaotic, but they believed that by memorizing and vibrating the exact frequencies of these 42 confessions, a person could artificially correct their spiritual weight at the moment of judgment. They were using numerology to bypass the natural consequences of their actions. The number 42 also connects to the angle of a rainbow, a bridge between the physical and the spiritual realms in optical physics, a phenomenon the Egyptians observed and revered. They encoded the number 42 into the Book of the Dead to build a bridge over the abyss of the underworld. This meticulous balancing act reveals the vulnerability of the human condition. Despite all their power and gold, the pharaohs were terrified that a simple miscalculation of their life's actions would result in their eternal destruction. Therefore, they relied on the 42 judges as a complex algorithm to ensure their survival.
Surviving the 42 judges was only the beginning of the journey. To truly cheat death, the Egyptians had to ensure the soul could physically manifest and sustain itself in the afterlife. Because the soul was not seen as a single entity, but a complex mechanism of different parts, primarily the Ka, the life force, and the Ba, the personality. But these distinct parts needed a geometric anchor to remain tethered to reality. Therefore, the architects of the pharaohs turned to the golden ratio, the divine proportion of 1.618. Long before the Greeks laid claim to this mathematical marvel, the Egyptians were actively embedding the golden ratio into the very fabric of their burial chambers. They understood that this ratio governs the growth patterns of nature, from the spiral of a nautilus shell to the arrangement of leaves on a stem. It is the mathematical signature of life itself. By constructing the king's chamber in the Great Pyramid according to the golden ratio, they were attempting to create a space that generated perpetual life energy. The Ka and the Ba were believed to require sustenance and a physical location to reunite. If the geometry of the tomb was chaotic, the soul fragments would scatter. But because the tomb was built using the golden ratio, it acted as a perfect energetic resonator. It captured the chaotic energy of the universe and reorganized it into the blueprint of life. This is why the mummification process was so precise. They were not just preserving meat and bone. They were attempting to freeze the physical body into a perfect geometric state, aligning the organs and limbs with sacred proportions. They believed that if the physical vessel mirrored the mathematical perfection of the universe, the soul could seamlessly slip back into it. The vulnerability here is profound. Imagine knowing that the eternal survival of your consciousness depends entirely on a stonemason's ability to perfectly calculate a decimal point. If the ratio was off by even a fraction, the resonant field would collapse, and the Ba would wander the underworld lost and blind. The golden ratio was their ultimate weapon against the decay of time. It was a declaration that humanity could master the hidden code of nature and use it to build a sanctuary that time itself could not erode. By wrapping their dead in the mathematics of life, they believed they were tricking the universe into granting them a continuation of existence, an unbroken spiral into eternity.
Geometry provided the space for the afterlife, but the Egyptians also needed to conquer the enemy that makes death inevitable, time itself. Because time is the ultimate destroyer, constantly moving forward and breaking down all physical matter. But the Egyptians realized that time was not a straight line. It was a cycle based on the movement of the stars. Therefore, they developed a numerological system to hack the cosmic clock, based entirely on the number 365. The creation of the 365-day calendar was not merely a tool for agriculture, it was a profound spiritual technology. The Egyptians divided the year into 36 decades, periods of 10 days, mapped to specific star groups called decans. But this left exactly 5 days unaccounted for at the end of the year. In their numerology, these 5 days were known as the epigomenal days, days that existed outside of normal time. They believed these 5 days were the birthdays of the gods Osiris, Horus, Set, Isis, and Nephthys. Because these days were mathematically outside the standard year, they were considered a loophole in the fabric of reality. The pharaohs used this numerical loophole to perform rituals of renewal, essentially resetting their own life force by aligning it with the birth of the gods. By embedding the number 365 into their temple architectures and ritual cycles, they were attempting to synchronize their physical bodies with the unstoppable momentum of the cosmos. If a human life could be perfectly timed with the movement of the heavens, they believed they could achieve a state of timelessness. The Book of the Dead is filled with spells that must be spoken at exact hours of the night, corresponding to specific numerical hours. If a spell was spoken out of numerical sequence or at the wrong cosmic hour, the magic would fail, and the soul would be trapped in a temporal anomaly. The fear of being lost in time was a tremendous source of anxiety. They combated this by wearing amulets carved with specific numbers that represented astronomical cycles, turning their own bodies into walking calendars. By mastering the number 365, they believed they were not just tracking time, but literally gripping the gears of the universe and forcing them to work in their favor, turning the destructive force of time into a vehicle for eternal renewal. It was a desperate, brilliant attempt to use numbers to outsmart the cosmic clock.
With the dimensions, the time, and the cosmic scales balanced, the final physical hurdle was the activation of the resurrection sequence. This leads us to one of the most astonishing applications of ancient numerology, acoustic mathematics. Because a perfectly proportioned room is useless if the energy within it remains dormant. But the Egyptians understood that numbers are not just visual symbols, they are the foundation of sound and vibration. Therefore, they designed the granite sarcophagi inside the pyramids to resonate at highly specific numerical frequencies. Modern acoustic engineers have discovered that the King's Chamber in the Great Pyramid and the sarcophagus within it are tuned to resonate at specific frequencies, particularly around 432 Hz and other harmonic multiples. In esoteric numerology, 432 is a number deeply connected to the natural vibration of the universe. The digits 4 plus 3 plus 2 equal 9, bringing us right back to the Egyptian code of completion. They believed that by chanting specific numerical sequences, the priests could turn the sarcophagus into an acoustic engine. The sound waves would bounce off the geometrically perfect walls, amplifying the frequency until the entire chamber vibrated with the mathematical signature of life. This was not a funeral rite. This was a physics experiment aimed at cheating death. The emotional core of this process is absolute desperation. The priests chanting in the dark were terrified that if their pitch was mathematically incorrect, the resonance would fail to shatter the barrier between worlds. The soul would remain trapped in the rotting physical vessel. They viewed the human body as an instrument that had gone out of tune through the process of death. The numerological frequencies generated by the sarcophagus were intended to forcibly retune the soul's energy to the frequency of the universe. This acoustic mathematics proves that their understanding of numerology was multidimensional. They did not just write numbers down, they sang them, they carved them, they lived inside them. The sarcophagus was essentially a tuning fork for immortality. By calculating the exact density of the granite and the precise volume of the hollowed-out space, the ancient mathematicians created a machine that used the power of numerical sound to blast open the gates of the afterlife, giving the pharaoh one final violent push into eternity.
If the ancient Egyptians had truly discovered a mathematical code to conquer death and achieve spiritual immortality, why is this knowledge not widely practiced today? Because as history marched forward, newer empires viewed this profound numerical power as a direct threat to their own authority. But the erasure of Egyptian numerology was not accidental. It was a deliberate, calculated sabotage. Therefore, when the Roman Empire and later religious institutions took control of Egypt, they systematically began to destroy, mistranslate, and outlaw the sacred mathematics. The Romans and later early Orthodox powers recognized that a society empowered by the knowledge that they could control their own spiritual destiny through numbers was a society that could not be easily subjugated. The common enemy here is the suppression of hidden knowledge by ruling elites. The brilliant shadow measurers and mathematician priests of Egypt were hunted down, their temples closed, and the great library of Alexandria, which held the most advanced numerological texts ever written, was tragically burned. The complex mathematical algorithms of the Book of the Dead were intentionally reduced by later scholars to mere superstitious babble. They took the profound acoustic mathematics of the pyramids and relabeled them as primitive tombs. This creates a massive unresolved tragedy in human history. We were robbed of an entire science of the soul. The vulnerability of the Egyptian system was that it relied on a highly trained lineage of initiates to pass down the correct pronunciations and numerical alignments. Once that lineage was broken, the code became locked. Imagine possessing the launch codes for the most powerful spiritual technology on Earth, but the language used to read the numbers has been completely erased. This is the state we have been left in. The sabotage was so effective that for centuries, humanity forgot that numbers were anything more than tools for counting currency and measuring land. The profound understanding that numbers are living, vibrating entities that can bridge the gap between life and death was pushed into the shadows, preserved only in secret societies and esoteric traditions. The tragedy is that the ancient math to cheat death is still etched into the stone walls of Egypt, waiting in plain sight for someone to correctly run the numbers again. Despite the massive sabotage and the burning of the libraries, a shocking open loop remains. Modern science is beginning to rediscover the exact numerical patterns the Egyptians worshipped. Because the ancients did not just encode their math into stone, they somehow mapped it to the very blueprint of human existence. But for thousands of years, we lacked the technology to see it. Therefore, when we finally discovered the structure of DNA, we stumbled upon a profound realization. The DNA double helix operates on structural proportions that are terrifyingly close to the golden ratio, the exact same mathematical ratio the Egyptians used to construct the resting places of the soul. Furthermore, the genetic code is based on 4 fundamental nucleobases, read in sequences of 3, creating 64 possible codons. In Egyptian esoteric mathematics, the Eye of Horus, a symbol of protection, healing, and resurrection, is broken down into fractional parts that mathematically sum to 63 over 64. The missing 1/64th was said to be supplied by magic, or the divine spark of life itself. The connection is undeniable. The ancient Egyptians were attempting to hack the physical body by manipulating the numerology of what we now know as genetics. They believed that by surrounding the dead body with the correct mathematical ratios, they could preserve the energetic template of the DNA, preventing the ultimate decay of the soul's information. This completely reframes their attempt to cheat death.
It was not a naive belief in ghosts, it was an intuitive grasp of molecular biology translated into the language of sacred geometry. The vulnerability we face today is our arrogance. We look back at the Egyptians as primitive, yet they understood the mathematical foundation of life millennia before we mapped the human genome. They knew that the code of life could be broken, analyzed, and potentially rewritten. By using the numbers of completion, the ratios of growth, and the frequencies of the cosmos, they were effectively trying to write a spiritual software patch to fix the bug of human mortality. This revelation forces us to question everything we know about human potential and the latent power hidden inside our own selves, waiting to be numerically unlocked.
Now that we have decoded the ancient strategies, a crucial question arises. Can we, in the modern world, use these ancient Egyptian numerical secrets to cheat our own mortality? Because while we may not be building giant stone pyramids to house our physical bodies, the fear of living a meaningless, forgotten life is the modern equivalent of the Egyptian fear of oblivion. But the core philosophy of their math remains completely intact and accessible. Therefore, we can apply their numerology to achieve a different kind of immortality, the immortality of purpose, legacy, and self-actualization. You see, the Egyptians believed that your name, your Ren, was a fundamental part of your soul, deeply tied to numerical vibrations. If your name was erased, you ceased to exist. In modern numerology, the letters of your name and the numbers of your birth date are not random. They form the specific mathematical code of your current incarnation. Just as the pharaohs used the Ennead and the Golden Ratio to align their tombs with the cosmos, you can use your life path number and expression number to align your daily actions with your ultimate purpose. When you live in mathematical dissonance with your true numerological blueprint, you experience the modern void, anxiety, depression, and the feeling of a wasted life. But when you calculate your core numbers and align your career, relationships, and mindset to those frequencies, you become an unstoppable force. You begin to resonate perfectly within your own life, much like the sarcophagus vibrating at 432 Hz. You are no longer fighting the chaotic energy of the universe. You are riding its mathematical waves. The ancient Egyptians used numerology to prepare for death, but we can use their exact same principles to master life. The common enemy we face today is distraction and societal programming that pulls us away from our true numerical frequency. By reclaiming this ancient science, you are essentially performing your own weighing of the heart while you are still alive. You are balancing your equations now, ensuring that the energetic weight of your existence leaves a permanent, indestructible mark on the world. This is how you cheat the death of your legacy.
We have journeyed through the terrifying void of the Egyptian afterlife, survived the mathematical audit of the 42 judges, and unlocked the acoustic resonance of the pyramids. Because we now understand that the pharaohs did not use magic to cheat death, but a highly advanced system of numerical resonance. But this incredible journey leaves us with one final urgent realization. Therefore, the ultimate formula for legacy is not buried in the sands of Egypt, it is hidden within you. The ancient texts, the Book of the Dead, and the intricate temple geometries were all external representations of an internal human potential. The Egyptians tried to cheat death by building external machines out of stone and math, but the true secret they were circling, the ultimate numerological revelation, is that consciousness itself is a mathematical construct. By understanding the numbers that govern your life, you cease to be a victim of random chance and time. You become the architect of your own destiny, just like the shadow measurers of old. If you ignore the numerical patterns of your life, you risk fading into the chaotic oblivion they feared so deeply. But if you embrace the mathematics of your soul, you align with the Ennead, the completion of the cycle, and your influence will echo through time long after you are gone. The open loop of human mortality is finally resolved, not by living forever in a physical body, but by creating a life so perfectly aligned with the cosmic math that your energy becomes a permanent part of the universe's equation. The knowledge that was sabotaged and burned by empires is currently experiencing a global resurgence. We are waking up to the power of numbers. Do not let the dogmas of modern society blind you to the ancient science of your soul. To discover the exact mathematical blueprint of your own life, to find your personal resonance, and unlock the power the ancients fought so hard to preserve, explore your own numerology path today. The math is waiting. The scales are balanced. It is time to step into the light of your true potential and leave a legacy that conquers time itself.